Coming up on Cannabis Coast to Coast News this week, President-elect Donald Trump names 2 pro-cannabis appointees to his cabinet, the controversial Matt Gaetz to AG and Robert Kennedy Jr. to Health and Human Services. Does that offset the election of prohibitionist John Thune to Senate Majority Leader? Andrew Behringer has that story from Washington, D.C. Plus, reaction from Normal's Morgan Fox.
One of the things that I am really kind of hopeful about is that we're looking at more than 10% of both chambers being brand new members in the 119th Congress. That presents a significant opportunity.
Dozens of New York cannabis farmers sue the Office of Cannabis Management for screwing up the rollout of adult use in the Empire State. And the U.S. Treasury reports that there are over 800 banks doing business with MRBs, or marijuana-related businesses, in this country. Considering there are 4,577 banks in the USA, safe banking is still needed at the federal level. And when is an administrative hearing by the DEA ever going to happen, you ask? First, a judge postpones the December 2nd hearing, then it's back on, with 24 groups have to show that they are worthy of testifying. The NCIA's Aaron Smith is one of them.
Rescheduling is the first step toward descheduling, and that's what we need.
Plus, a federal $8 million plus grant has been given to a company to build a hemp processing factory in the U.S., and the Last Prisoner Project wants President Biden to change his tradition of pardoning turkeys and do the right thing and pardon cannabis prisoners, not turkeys, during the holiday season. Hashtag pardon people, not poultry, is trending. All that on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Alaina Pinto. Next.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast, PCMTV's weekly roundup of industry news from California to New York. I'm Alaina Pinto. If you want to get this news every week, we release it on Mondays on our app, PCMTV, and the homepage of procannabismedia.com. So scan that QR code and you can go directly into the App Store or Google Play to get it. First up, the election is over. Many in the cannabis industry are still shocked that their legalization candidate, VP Kamala Harris, lost to now President-elect Donald Trump. 2 weeks ago, you might have heard Normal's Morgan Fox's concern about the new president's cabinet appointees. Well, that started this past week when Trump named the controversial Matt Gaetz as his pick for Attorney General, and last week named Robert Kennedy Jr. to head up the Health and Human Services. Both have shown to be pro-cannabis in the past, but South Dakota Senator John Thune is not. He was voted in as the new Senate Majority Leader, and he is already calling for cannabis to return to Schedule 1. Our man in Washington, D.C. is Andrew Behringer, and he takes a look at the beginning of the transition.
I'm Andrew Behringer with the Washington, D.C. report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. In a recent surprising move that could reshape federal cannabis policy, President-elect Donald Trump has nominated Representative Matt Gaetz from Florida for U.S. Attorney General. Gaetz, who resigned from his House seat following the nomination, would become the very first openly pro-cannabis legislation Attorney General in U.S. history, if he is confirmed. This nomination marks a significant departure from Trump's first term when he appointed Jeff Sessions to the role. Now, if we remember, Jeff Sessions was a huge opponent of cannabis reform who notably reversed Obama-era cannabis enforcement guidelines. Now, Gaetz' nomination suggests that a potential change in federal cannabis policy could be coming, with the nominee having explicitly pledged to go easy on cannabis. If appointed to lead the Department of Justice, he would do so. As a congressman, he twice voted for the Democratic-led Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, also known as the MORE Act, which would have federally legalized cannabis. His reform efforts extended beyond legalization, as he supported cannabis banking access legislation and sponsored amendments that would eliminate cannabis testing requirements for military recruits. Now, previously, as a Florida state legislator, Gaetz authored medical cannabis legislation and also advocated for expanding patient access to include smokable products. Now, however, the path to confirmation may not be smooth for Gaetz, as he faces several potential hurdles, including, funny enough, an ongoing Justice Department investigation and a GOP-led ethics probe. Now, this nomination will require Senate confirmation or a recess appointment to take effect. If confirmed, Gaetz would assume leadership of the Justice Department at a crucial moment for cannabis policy, as the Biden administration considers rescheduling. Well, that's going to do it for me and Andrew Behringer, reporting for Coast to Coast News. See you next week.
The on-again, off-again DEA hearing on the HHS recommendation to move cannabis to Schedule 3 of the CSA is back on again for December 2nd. Sort of. There will be a hearing, but it will be a hearing on the validity of the people and the groups who were picked to testify at the hearing that was scheduled months ago. Now you see why many think the D in the DEA stands for delay instead of drug. One person who is on the list of 24 is Aaron Smith, the executive director of the NCIA, one of the largest industry associations.
Rescheduling is the first step toward descheduling, and that's what we need. This isn't going to be, I don't see this as being a step for Big Pharma takeover. Now, Big Pharma will have products that are cannabinoid products that it's going to be easier for them to develop under a Schedule 3 framework than it is now. It would be more possible for them to develop than it isn't now. But most of the countries already moved toward adult use, which is completely out of step with Schedule 3 or any of the schedules. So, I don't see Big Pharma is not going to move in and start producing the kinds of products you're seeing on the shelves in adult use, in the adult use market, or even in the state-based medical markets. Those aren't products that are approved by the FDA. They're not likely to be approved by the FDA. Pharma works on usually and the FDA is usually looking at single molecule drugs. Mm-hmm. And that's just not what our industry is. And so there's always going to be a place for whole plant cannabis products, and it's going to be continuing to violate federal law. Now we're just violating the law a little bit less because we have, we will hopefully move down from 1 to 3, but we still will be out of compliance with the law. And Pharma doesn't want to. They're not going to risk that.
So the question still exists: if this political process designed to make the right decision will end up with federal reform. One thing everyone sees is just more bureaucratic delays. Over 70% of the over 43,000 public comments collected during that designated period over the summer wanted cannabis descheduled completely. And now there is a grassroots movement of citizens and advocates who have scheduled their own testimonials on why the plant should be descheduled and not rescheduled on Saturday, November 30th. The testimonials will be with people who did not make the DEA cut to officially testify, so they are doing that themselves. There is also a rally planned on December 2nd across the street from the DEA's office in Virginia. The group is calling for descheduling and not rescheduling. And you can find out more on their website, deschedule-not-reschedule.info. The United States Treasury released a report on the state of banking for cannabis companies in the U.S. this week. The Treasury report concluded that there are over 800 banking institutions doing business with MRBs, or marijuana-related businesses in this country. And now, before you ask, so why does this industry need safer banking? Well, consider this. There are over 4,500 total banks in the United States, and of course, a huge majority still don't allow traditional banking for the industry. Enough said. Another week, another lawsuit in New York. Many cannabis farmers in the Empire State have seen their crops ruined because of the delays in the rollout of the adult use market in that state. Now, the OCM is getting sued by dozens of farmers because of the lack of communication and delays. Pam Chmiel has more from the Big Apple.
This is Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Pam Chmiel reporting from New York. New York veterans blew smoke at the Office of Cannabis Management this past Veterans Day, reminding them of the few cannabis licenses that have been awarded to vets when they were promised by the state that they would get priority along with the social equity applicants. Last year, the group of vets sued New York cannabis regulators for giving preference to convicted drug felons, and the state settled the case after a judge ruled that the regulators were likely illegally favoring drug felons over disabled vets. And the New York Cannabis Farmers Alliance is also suing New York because they claim the rollout of the retail market has been disastrous for participants at all levels of the industry. And according to an article in the Times-Union newspaper, the lawsuit asserts that the small cannabis farmers in New York are facing severe financial distress, with 97% operating at a loss and nearly 2/3 under a 1% profit margin. And over 90% are in need of operating funds to maintain solvency. Joseph Calderon, president of the Cannabis Farmers Alliance, said without relief, the industry is at risk of collapse, and that the lawsuit was necessary as they've exhausted all other means to negotiate in good faith with the New York Office of Cannabis Management. And more trouble for the New York Office of Cannabis Management. The Mid-Hudson newspaper reports that State Senator Bill Weber is also calling the state's rollout of the recreational cannabis industry mismanaged and is proposing new legislation that he says will fix many of the problems with the new agency regulating legal cannabis in the state. This is not how New York should be handling its cannabis legalization process, said Weber. The very individuals we have set out to help are being left behind. While fund managers profit off the backs of New York taxpayers, the time for change is now. Weber claims the proposed legislation will mandate greater transparency from the Office of Cannabis Management, including detailed public reporting on fund disbursements, management fees, and the progress of social equity licenses. It will also implement strict caps on management fees to ensure more resources are directed toward helping social equity applicants, not enriching fund managers. That's this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Pam Chmiel reporting from New York.
The 13th annual MJBiz Con trade show and convention in Las Vegas, Nevada will be happening, and PCMTV will have a team of reporters on the floor, and we will be producing a special report that will be released in 2 weeks on December 9th. The convention starts on Tuesday, December 3rd, and if you have a business and want to be part of our special, contact us at info@procannabismedia.com. One of the many panels that are such large parts of the largest gathering of the industry businesses will feature Chris Roberts, the political editor for MJBiz Daily. PCMTV founder Jimmy Young talked with Chris this week.
Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I am PCMTV founder Jimmy Young, and I am so happy to be welcoming in a fellow journalist from the world of media out of New York City. His name is Chris Roberts. He's from New York, and of course, he works with MJBiz Daily. Chris, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Jimmy, thank you for having me.
Okay, the first question has to go right to what happened in the election a week ago. You had one candidate who was out front talking about legalization. You had another candidate who was late to the cannabis ball, if you will, and decided to vote yes on 3 in Florida in his home state. and then basically say, I think Florida's got it right. I think we should decriminalize. First time in history, we've actually had two presidential candidates talk openly about the fact that our federal laws just aren't right. How did you view the election, and how did you view the results of it, and where do you think we're going to go? And I know that's a big question, but
Sure.
maybe you could just narrow it down to this is what I think. Okay.
Yeah, you got it. Well, I mean, and obviously a lot has happened since. A lot's happening right now in terms of who Donald Trump is going to appoint to lead key positions in his cabinet, Jimmy. But yeah, like you pointed out, it was an historic first where both major party presidential candidates, it wasn't, oh, one's against, one's for. We've had a lot of binaries in the past. What we had this time was who supports it the most.
Emilie Lewis is a vice president of strategy and event planning for MJBiz Con, which is a year-round project. And she, too, spoke with Jimmy about this year's convention.
I reviewed your schedule today. Okay. And I'm looking at that and I'm saying, oh my God, I want to go see that. Oh, I totally want to go to that. Wait, how am I going to do all this in one day? I mean, it is so overwhelming. And I also appreciate the fact the email you guys get sent out this week. Prepare for your trip.
Yes.
Prepare for how.
Yes.
So that's my first question, Emilie.
Yes.
Give me advice on how the hell I'm going to get to every one of these events, or at least be able to tell the story of the conference.
Yes. So first I want to apologize because I understand that the conference schedule can bring on a headache because it is a lot. But we do that for a reason. MJBiz is really the only trade show where every single segment of this industry comes together. Most trade shows really concentrate on one section of the industry, whether it's cultivation and growing, or whether it's packaging and processing, or retail and brand, or science. We do it all. So with that, because our industry is so complex, there is a lot when it comes to the schedule. So back to your question, you asked me how to prepare. So the one thing I would say is if you're new to MJBiz and you've never been, we have this amazing thing called our badge quiz. Now, I know we're all adults. We don't want to go back to school and be quizzed again. You're not getting graded.
I'm a teacher. I'm constantly teaching. Okay, go ahead.
I did know that. So I should have known you would like a quiz. But we do have a badge quiz, and all that does is it really just walks you through. It's a quick, simple few prompts of a question. What are you interested in? What are you looking to get out of the show? What segment of the industry are you in? And it will guide you through our, nice little algorithm to kind of tell you what type of badge you should be getting. Mm-hmm. And then within that, so say it takes you down the road and it's, you want a conference and expo badge because maybe you do want to meet some brands, you do want to pick up some new vendors, but you also really are interested in the educational side of it. It will actually give you prompts for the tracks within our conference program based on the questions that you've asked as to what tracks you should be attending. And so to break that down a little further, when I say tracks, we do have different tracks within our conference program. So you can find a business one-on-one track. There's a science track. You might be interested in marketing. You might be interested in regulatory or policy conversations. You can choose your own adventure, and that's the great thing about our conference. You can get a little bit of all of that.
The rest of the Chris Roberts interview will be released on our website, procannabismedia.com. And on Thursday this week, November 21st, Jimmy and Emilie's conversation will be released the next day on Friday the 22nd. And that'll do it for the A block of Cannabis Coast to Coast this week. Next up, a story about a federal grant to create a hemp processing factory. And Virginia's Joe Parsons will introduce us to a Virginia artist who has a prescription for cannabis art. Back with more news after this.
The first thing, tell us about your art business and how you infused cannabis into your business model to make it a success.
I certainly will. And it's, that thing where they say the worst things in life sometimes end up being the biggest gift that you'll ever have. Well, that's kind of what happened.
Ready to take your craft to the next level? Imagine faster extractions, purer products, and more profits. Sounds good, right? At Pure 5 Extraction, we've revolutionized cannabis extraction with our game-changing technology. No solvents, no heat, just the cleanest, most natural process on the market. Whether you're a boutique grower or a large-scale operation, Pure 5 has the tools to elevate your business worldwide. Visit pure5extraction.com today. Pure 5 Extraction, because your plants deserve the best.
Welcome back to the B Block, our second section of our weekly news show for the cannabis industry. I'm Alaina Pinto. Well, did you download the PCMTV app yet? If you want to get first access to our news every week, go to the App Store or Google Play and download it today. You will also get access to past news shows that document the fight to end cannabis prohibition over the past 3 years. Hemp and marijuana are derived from the same cannabis sativa plant. THC cannabis has become a billion-dollar industry over the past 5 years now, with 24 states legalizing adult use. However, it's hemp that has more uses than just getting high. Henry Ford made a car out of hemp back in the mid-20th century, and now the federal government, U.S. Department of Energy, is giving a grant of $8.4 million to a company called Hemp Texture to support their building of an industrial processing and manufacturing facility in Tennessee. You can build buildings with hemp and clothes, and hemp is more environmentally friendly than many traditional building materials. Sounds pretty cool. Next week, Virginia's Joe Parsons will visit a hemp house, but this week he's introducing us to an artist who uses cannabis as a prescription for her artistic genius. Here's Joe.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection, and this is the Virginia Cannabis Report on Cannabis Coast to Coast News. First of all, I'd like to take a little time out to thank everyone that decided to vote. Voting was so important, and regardless of which side you were on, it takes red and blue to make green happen. So Pro Cannabis Media would like to thank everyone that took the time. All right, everyone, today I have a very, very special treat. We are joined here with Linda Biggs. Linda Biggs is a very excellent and outstanding artist who has decided to infuse cannabis with her art. So, Linda, first of all, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Joe. This is a pleasure. Thank you.
Outstanding. All right. The first thing, tell us about your art business and how you infused cannabis into your business model to make it a success.
I certainly will. And it's you know that thing where they say the worst things in life sometimes end up being the biggest gift that you'll ever have. Well, that's kind of what happened. I've been an artist my entire life. It's been my business for 30 years or so. However, I had never, ever, ever, ever used cannabis until I was like 54 years old. And when I did, it changed my world. I actually used it as a result of a tragic accident. Someone gave it to me for pain relief, and I was like, huh. I mean, I was insulted. I was like, are you kidding me? All of this stuff, all of this medicine, all of these doctors, and then you're going to give me that, thinking it's going to help? Left. I tried it. I was like, this is either heaven or I'm dead, because this stuff worked. I was totally the naysayer, and that moment my life changed. And it was funny because at that time I was unable to paint. I was totally destroyed from this accident, and I started using cannabis. First I made butter, and then I upgraded it to using RSO, and those two choices changed my life. It allowed the pain to go away. It allowed me to pick up a pencil again. And I mean, it's a big snowball effect, but that moment when I used cannabis and realized the magical medicine that it was, once I was able to draw again and paint again, I said, I'm going to celebrate cannabis in everything I do because I can't do it, or I would not have been able to do it if I had not had that eye-opening, like, totally changed my life. And from that moment, which was probably 2014 or probably 2014, I have celebrated it ever since. And I mean, I carry that flag so big and have tried in every way possible to put it out there. I get my hand slapped and I put it out there again. So that's how it started.
Linda, I would just like to say your artwork is absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
I actually looked at some of your bongs, and I am going to be purchasing one as a gift for my wife. So it's
Awesome.
absolutely
Awesome.
amazing work. And I just want to thank you one more time for taking your time to speak with Pro Cannabis Media.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are very welcome. And that is going to do it for this week from the Virginia Cannabis Connection and Pro Cannabis Media's Coast to Coast News. I'm Joe Parsons with Linda Biggs. Until next time, everyone, stay lifted.
California may still be the state with the most revenue from cannabis, but that state continues to make it as difficult as possible for businesses to survive. Case in point, the delivery company Ease. After that company closed down, sold off their assets, and closed their operations, they have a second life. A $10 million Series B round of funding will allow Ease to open 70 locations across the states of California, Colorado, Florida, and Michigan. In total, Ease operates 57 stores, 11 delivery hubs, and 2 production facilities. And now the biggest question is, will the state's proposed excise taxes continue to croak operators? Dina Nagib attended a Behringer conference this week in California and has this week's California Cannabis Report.
I'm Dina Nagib, Principal Consultant of Grass Goddess Consulting, here to give you the latest developments in California for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This past Tuesday, the Behringer Cannabis Capital Conference came to Anaheim, California for the State Market Spotlight. It was well attended with people from up and down the state showing up to hear from the panels and network with industry leaders. The panels covered a wide range of topics with a focus on California's influence on cannabis nationally and globally. Conversations included the recent hemp ban, raising capital in the financial landscape, ways to strengthen the brand-retailer relationship, and how to reach more customers. The topics and panelists were very well curated and included professionals from a variety of organizations. During a fireside chat with Dustin Moore, the co-founder of Embark, and Nicole Elliott, the director of the California Department of Cannabis Control, they spoke about a range of challenges operators are facing. One of the pressing issues in California next year is the looming excise tax increase. The excise tax, currently at 15%, is set to increase to up to 19% in July of next year. It's not set in stone, and operators are trying to figure out how to stop the hike. California is one of the most difficult markets in the nation, but there was also plenty of optimism with a focus on innovation. That's it for the conference wrap-up. I'm Dina Nagib with Grass Goddess Consulting, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
One more note on California. Growers there are claiming that the harvest delivered some of the best sun-grown plants in years. A wet spring and dry summer has turned out a quality crop that some veterans claim could be the best harvest season of all time. John Casale, who grew up in the Emerald Triangle, claims that the sun-grown cannabis has rich terpene profiles, earthy, distinct aromas that distinguishes it from the indoor grows that are still a large part of the new adult use markets. So while the outdoor grows in the Emerald Triangle were exceptional this year, the same cannot be said on earnings results from many multi-state operators. Here's Karen Black's Arizona Cannabis Report for this week.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. 2 Arizona multi-state operators released their third quarter earnings, revealing significant losses. Forefront Ventures Corp posted a net loss of $6.4 million, with revenue falling to $17.1 million from $18.7 last quarter, primarily due to increased competition in Illinois and Massachusetts. Tilt Holdings showed a larger net loss of $12.6 million, with revenue slightly down to $27 million, driven by a decrease in sales and rising logistics costs. Both companies said they're adapting their strategies to navigate challenging market conditions. Speaking of which, Arizona's cannabis sales hit a snag in September, dropping to their lowest level so far this year. At $83.1 million, September's total is nearly $9 million less than August and a drop of over 11%. Medical sales held steady at 19% of total receipts. Industry experts are curious to see if this is just a temporary dip or a sign of bigger changes ahead. More bad news? A scary scene unfolded at a dispensary in Tolleson. A customer accidentally discharged his gun while reaching for his wallet. 2 bystanders were hit by bullet fragments, and thankfully, their injuries weren't life-threatening. In the chaos that followed, the man responsible left the scene before the cops arrived. While Arizona is a constitutional carry state, the incident has raised concerns about safety protocols in cannabis shops. Now for some good news. Arizona-based DizPot just snagged a patent for a game-changing packaging solution. They've created a child-resistant paper tube that keeps kids safe and gives Mother Nature a break. DizPot's invention is a big deal for the cannabis industry, which struggles with the plastic problem. For instance, in 2020, U.S. cannabis companies used nearly 1 billion pieces of single-use plastic. Yikes. DizPot's paper tube could help put a dent in that. And even better, they plan to roll out more eco-friendly designs, so the future of cannabis packaging could be a little greener. And last, Mike Tyson may have lost his bout against Jake Paul, but the boxer still has something to celebrate. Products from the cannabis brand he co-founded, Tyson 2.0, are now available at select dispensaries in Arizona through a strategic partnership with local cultivator and distributor Desert Fairways. The legendary boxer is not pulling any punches in his hopes to dominate the cannabis market in the Southwest. That's it for this week's Arizona Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
A recent survey by the online site NugMD claims that more Americans are upping their spending on cannabis this year. There were 273 participants in the survey, and about 61% claim they are spending either much more or more on cannabis compared to last year. You would think that many states would be happy with these results, but in Colorado, there are some more challenges than you would expect. Here's Xavier Jaillet.
Hi, everyone. My name is Xavier Jaillet, and I am the chair of the Colorado chapter of the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. I sit on the board of the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, and finally, I am a non-attorney professional at the McDonald Hopkins law firm. Most importantly for today, however, is I am the Colorado correspondent for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. And we've got some big news coming out of the state over the last few weeks. A couple stories related to the election, of course, and the election cycle, but then also some news coming out of one of the larger retailers in the state announcing that it would be shuttering its doors in 2025. So let's start there. That retailer is Green Dragon. They have multiple retail dispensaries across Colorado. They've got a large cultivation facility, and unfortunately for the operators of Green Dragon here in Colorado, they were owned by Ease. Ease Technologies is a cannabis delivery service that recently entered bankruptcy, receivership, the proper term in cannabis, since bankruptcy is often not available to cannabis companies. And as part of that process, the assets of Ease that constituted the Green Dragon dispensary chain here in Colorado were sold. And as part of that process, the Green Dragon announced that it would be closing its doors. So locals do fully expect the dispensaries themselves, the licenses, the operations to continue to be in operation, but under perhaps a new name in 2025. Now, moving to election information and providing kind of some detailed results about local initiatives here in Colorado, we actually did have 8 ballot measures related to sales, cultivation, and taxation here in the state. I would say, post-election, I think the sentiment coming out of those ballot measures and their successes or failures is generally positive. The biggest one, of course, is Colorado Springs moving to finally allow adult use recreational sales within the city. People are often shocked to learn that the second largest city here in Colorado, Colorado Springs, has been a medical-only jurisdiction ever since Colorado allowed adult use sales back in 2014. So voters narrowly approved a ballot measure to allow sales in the city, while also simultaneously narrowly rejecting a measure that would have prohibited such sales within city limits. So Colorado Springs seems to be flipping recreational. Next, another kind of larger municipality, not nearly as large as Denver, Colorado Springs, is Loveland, a little town not too far from Fort Collins, where a ballot measure allowing adult use of medical sales with a 5% tax was successfully passed. So residents of Loveland, Colorado will have access to adult use cannabis in 2025. And then there were measures passed in Erie and Sterling, allowing the sale of cannabis, adult use cannabis. So again, positive to see some of these holdout municipalities here in Colorado finally making the move to allow adult use recreational sales. There were some mixed outcomes in 2 of the 8 ballot measures, specifically in Alaina and Meade. Both those ballot outcomes ultimately allowed the adult use sales, but imposed some onerous taxation or some license limitations that make commercial opportunities within those jurisdictions perhaps a little bit more limited than you would see in other places around Colorado. And so the significance of all this is that, there's still an ongoing local level legalization effort being made, and that advocates around the state, even a state like Colorado that's had adult use sales for so long, continue to push to allow full access in all localities. So that's it from this week from Colorado. I appreciate everyone tuning in, and I'm looking forward to the next update.
That'll do it for the B Block, but we have more coming up, including the story about the Last Prisoner Project's latest effort to free all low-level incarcerated cannabis prisoners. And now they are asking the outgoing president, Joe Biden, to pardon people instead of his traditional turkey pardons this time of year. We can explain more after this.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Now, let me tell you my cannabis story. I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore. So I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weejits filtration system. What? The Weejits.com, Weejits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. The guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weejits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind.
Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is the C Block, our final section of our weekly newscast for the cannabis industry. I'm Alaina Pinto. Last reminder to download the PCMTV app on the App Store or Google Play to have access instantly to our weekly news show of the best cannabis news around. Okay, download the app. One of the most successful nonprofit groups in cannabis has been the Last Prisoner Project, created by Steve D'Angelo, formerly of Harborview, announced on Weed Talk Live back in 2019 that he was dedicating the rest of his life to getting all nonviolent, low-level cannabis convicted prisoners out of jail. A huge undertaking, to say the least, but in 5 years, just 5 years, the Last Prisoner Project has worked on hundreds of cases and now is asking President Joe Biden to free as many prisoners as possible before he leaves office. For decades, the White House has pardoned 2 turkeys before Thanksgiving from being the main course on the holiday. Well, now the Last Prisoner Project is creating a hashtag that reads, "Pardon people, not poultry." A YouGov poll in August concluded that Biden's announcement to pardon low-level cannabis offenses was one of his most popular policies of his administration. Biden also urged state governors to offer mass pardons for low-level offenses in their states. And Maryland and Massachusetts pardoned over 175,000 past convictions. Now let's check in on the cannabis stocks with our man, Doug Miller, who is high on Wall Street.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Cannabis Coast to Coast. Agrify Corporation announced its intention to acquire certain assets from Double or Nothing LLC, the owner and operator of the Senorita brand of hemp-derived legal THC HDLT drinks, in exchange for 530,000 shares of Agrify common stock or common stock equivalents. The transaction is expected to close before the end of the year. Senorita offers consumers HDLT beverages that mirror well-known cocktails like margarita in 2 flavors, classic and mango. It's known for its clean, fresh flavors and commitment to high-quality, natural ingredients. Senorita offers a low-sugar, low-calorie alternative to alcoholic beverages. So let's see how this affects Agrify's stock chart. It's trading around $14.60, and it has jumped up quite a bit in the last few days. So it's right at the top. I would wait for some pullback and a better price, and always trade smart and lock in those profits. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast, I'm Doug Miller.
Now that Florida has said no to adult use, the existing medical operators who spent millions on the Yes on 3 campaign have to regroup. Keep in mind that the Florida medical market is still one of the biggest in the country, with over 800,000 registered patients and a market that BDSA projects to be $2.7 billion. BDSA is a large cannabis data and analytics firm. Trulieve is still the biggest operator in that state, but Air Wellness is still moving ahead with plans to expand its indoor grow facility in Ocala. It's tricky growing this plant, no matter what the climate outside is, and replicating perfect indoor growing conditions is a challenge. The state of Ohio continues to go through its growing pains, and now that state is starting to watch the flow of tax money and if it is reaching the people it's supposed to help. Christina Brisson's Ohio report is sponsored by Yellow Labs, now in 40 dispensaries in that state. Here she is.
In serene Springfield, Ohio, Ethan battles anxiety and persistent body pain. Seeking relief, he turns to Yellow Labs' Calm THC cream, offering tranquility via delivery technology. Massaging in the cream, Ethan feels waves of peace and serenity easing his anxiety and tension. Empowered by the remarkable relief, he sets out on a journey towards healing and renewal. Drawn to Yellow Labs' transformative offerings, the Calm THC cream becomes a beacon of comfort, soothing both his physical and emotional pain.
Hi, I'm Christina Brisson with Over the Top Renovations with your weekly cannabis report from Ohio with Cannabis Coast to Coast News. So this week I'm going to talk about something fun with Chef Travis Peterson, who's traveling with his restaurant and culinary skills, where he makes numerous cannabis foods, and you can actually choose the level of your cannabis you would like. None, medium, high, however suits you and your tolerance level. And another thing I'm going to touch on since the elections and all the politics is that here in Ohio we have a 10% tax on cannabis. Of that 10% tax, 36% of that 10% is supposed to go to a fund for social equity and jobs, which has a number of programs it does to support people in housing, in dealing with old laws and getting people set free. Well, now we're here at a year and there's still no rules set. There's a website and you can sign up for an email, but there's no information. So this is something we want to start getting in on more with Ohio and trying to figure out how we get this stuff to use. With as much sales as we have, there's a lot of money to be had there. Additionally, in the next couple weeks, I hope to be talking to you about a new business with more to come on that. Thank you, Ohio. This is your weekly cannabis report. I am Christina Brisson with Over the Top Renovations and Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
The Ohio Cannabis Report is supported by Yellow Labs and BetterWaysToTHC.com. Search for Yellow Labs near me and find one of 40 dispensaries in Ohio carrying these amazing mists and creams.
In Massachusetts, the Cannabis Control Commission released health and safety guidelines for its state growers and operators this week. It was 2 years ago that a TruLeaf worker with asthma breathed in the ground cannabis dust in one of their facilities and had a fatal attack. OSHA fined TruLeaf, the Cannabis Control Commission fined TruLeaf, and that MSO pulled out of the Bay State. This week, there was a major conference for the indigenous cannabis operators on Native American land, and Tina Tasaka has more from Nevada.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada and Tribal Nations report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Following the elections, the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association hosted its third annual National Indigenous Cannabis Policy Summit on November 13th through the 15th in Washington, D.C. The event gathered tribal leaders, officials, businesses, healthcare professionals, veterans, and advocates to address cannabis-related challenges in Indigenous communities. Educational sessions included experts like Judge Mary Celeste, Dr. Sherman Home, and Shinnecock Nation's Shanae Bullock. I wish I could mention all the amazing speakers and sponsors. Please see more at indigenouscannabis.org. Cannabis operator Deep Roots Harvest in Nevada is expanding and recently secured $30 million from Chicago Atlantic to expand across Nevada. Currently, Deep Roots has a standalone cultivation and processing facility in the Silver State. It runs 5 dispensaries and plans to open one more in December 2024. Deep Roots Harvest plans for expansion, and it includes additional retail and expansion of cultivation assets across Nevada. Is everyone getting ready for the expo for marijuana in Las Vegas? MJBiz Con is just around the corner beginning December 3rd. There are events to fill your days and nights indeed. Check out all the special events over the 3-day conference.
MJBiz Con has become the industry standard.
It's the biggest party in the space, right? It's kind of a must attend.
This is the biggest, most important cannabis conference in the world.
This has sort of become one of those foundational points of the year where you come to reconnect, you come to build business relationships, you come for new opportunities, kind of a non-negotiable as far as the annual cannabis calendar goes.
I always kind of like to geek out at the expo.
Really excited to kind of walk around the trade show and just see all the booths and see what technology's out there.
There are so many highlights to mention. Here are 3 exciting lineups. MJBiz Con created a new partnership with Gangier to bring its esteemed Gangier product specialist training to MJBiz Con. You can earn your Gangier product specialist for $399. There's an all-day Women in Leadership Forum, and this year Blunt Brunch has teamed up and will have an empowering lunch. Associations Day will connect the cannabis world to over 40 nonprofits and associations driving our industry forward. Many of us here at Pro Cannabis Media will be buzzing around, and we hope to see you there. In the meantime, you can download our app to watch our shows anytime and on the go, PCMTV. That's it for the Nevada highlights and Tribal Nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
It's been a while since we heard from Brandon Jones in Missouri, but the man from B Green Distribution is back this week with a recap of what's been going on in his state. Here's Brandon.
Hey, everybody, it's Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. And yes, I'm back. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Had a little stuff that, you got to deal with in life sometimes, but I am very grateful to be back here and bringing you the news from the great state of Missouri. And if you notice over my shoulder, I'm at CPKC Stadium, where the Kansas City Current women's soccer team's playing in a playoff game this weekend. So pretty exciting news. And if you didn't know, Missouri, yes, we are very important in the cannabis realm. We actually passed $1.4 billion in sales. And just a little bit over 2 years, we've reached that mark, passing much more states that have been here longer times, like Nevada, Colorado, and Arizona. Yes, Missouri has taken off. A lot of it because of the states surrounding us, but also because the people here in Missouri love their cannabis. Another couple big stories happening here is there was a little deal where they were double sales taxing people by providing a county tax on top of a city tax. So they were providing 3% for one, 3% for another. And there was a little ruling on Tuesday that said they're not going to be able to double tax anybody. So 3% is going to be returned unless obviously that gets appealed. So that process has started. But we sure hope that they're not anymore double taxing, where instead of just 3% sales tax, they're charging you 6%. One final story that's been going on here since 2018 when the Farm Bill passed, but we're seeing a lot more attention now because of a little bit dispute between the regulated market here for cannabis sales and the shops that are allowed to sell CBD. So what they're calling intoxicating hemp is sold here throughout the state of Missouri because there is no enforcement agency to stop anybody from selling it. So, for example, you can go to a gas station and get CBD or intoxicating hemp flower that looks the exact same as some of the cannabis flower you'll get inside of a dispensary. So now the dispensary owners don't really like the competition, so they're having to have some more attention brought to this situation. So now there's lobbyists on the other side trying to see if that intoxicating hemp can be taken off all the shelves. I do want it to be tested and regulated, and there should be an enforcement agency to make sure the policies are being followed, but I don't understand why the policy for not allowing people to have hemp should be in place. As long as there's somebody to enforce it, make sure it's safe and secure for everyone and do it the right way, I'm all for plain over pill medicine. So, yes, it's me, Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
And finally, tonight, the cannabis industry is getting some advice from the beer industry on how to end prohibition. After all, it was beer and alcohol that was prohibited from 1920 to 1933 in this country. So they do have some history with righting some of history's wrongs. The Beer Institute, a national trade organization that has been around since the Civil War, is offering cannabis some guiding principles for regulating intoxicating hemp and cannabis products. The beer industry believes the decision to legalize these products should be made by American voters, state legislatures, and federal policymakers. The principles are in regards to revenue, regulation, responsibility, and research. All are necessary, and at last check, that's exactly what the industry is trying to do, right? Well, that'll do it for this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Alaina Pinto. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly, and we'll see you next time.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Be Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Green Finger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Debbie Fazy with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Alaina Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of the news from the industry. I'm Alaina Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCMTV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Pro Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.